Hello everybody in YouTube land. This is Carpo here, and my video here is going to be about philosophical debates. And first off, although I like to consider myself a philosopher, I don't generally use that title because it has connotations with it. You hear the word philosopher and often people kind of roll their eyes. When I was younger, my view of philosophy was, what good is it? What good is philosophy if you can't do anything with it? Of course, I'd never really considered it or didn't have any opinion either way. But what I noticed is that you take a philosophical class and all you learn is philosophy, and what can you do with it to teach philosophy? In other words, making a career out of philosophy is not necessarily an easy thing. And I think that the person crosses that threshold when they realize that it's not about making any type of material gain, but strictly over wisdom, mental gain. People have debates on YouTube all the time about philosophical issues, and the reason why I'm making this video is because I made a little list here of what I consider important parts of a philosophical debate to make sure that we're not wasting our time on old issues. Sometimes people might confront me with the question when we're having a discussion back and forth about, well, haven't you considered this yet? And in my mind, yes, I've already considered that. I've processed it years ago and moved past. Or some issues maybe I haven't yet. It doesn't mean that we're at any particular state. In other words, we're all at different levels, but those levels aren't above or below. Except for in philosophy. And there are a few things we can gain. So, in philosophical debates, look at the historical arguments first. Should be the first step in any philosophical debate. Should be to look at the historical arguments, to understand history, and review the already debates on these issues. Some people have spent lifetimes on issues such as free will, and one person steps into the picture, some guy fresh out of college, and he says, oh yeah, free will is this or free will is that, making a statement as if it's fact, and then people say, well, there is a truth on this issue. My thing is always, the truth is fleeting, okay? It's something that we have to agree upon by having combined wisdom. Look at the value of the information gained. Is this something that can be used in your day-to-day life? And many of the things that people argue, I think often philosophy goes into the realm of details and trivialities, semantics. What does a word mean? None of that really helps us to gain a foothold in understanding who we are and where we're going. It almost comes down to an arrogance about particular terms and ideas. Ideas exchanged are ideas gained. It's like the old saying, if you and I give each other a piece of fruit or something to eat, we have each exchanged, but we still have one each. When we exchange ideas, we have combined ideas, which builds a structure. In other words, you gain from sharing wisdom. Another point is, don't assume there's already an answer. This is one of the biggest mistakes I think people make. They read somewhere that this is how this is, and they just assume that it's been solved, that this problem's been solved. And they go along with what they've been told or what they've learned, because it's sometimes easier that way. We see this all around us. This is what religion is a person assuming there's already an answer. That, oh, the people that came before me have already written this down, and I don't need to find any further, look any further. About truth. The truth will always be objective, but it will always be experienced subjectively. So no matter how much we argue about this official truth that people talk about, it doesn't matter if it exists or not, because the subjective experience of the individual is always going to determine how that truth is perceived. So that's what's really important, is seeing how do we perceive these things. Folks go too deep into philosophy before they know themselves, and they become very, very intelligent, intellectual, very wise on worldly issues, moral issues and values, and what's right and wrong, and ancient history, and they totally don't know themselves. So they cast the shadow on people. This makes bad teachers. A good example, we all know people on even YouTube who have channels who have great information and maybe want to share it, but are just horrible at doing so. They cast threats and insults and hate people and wonder why no one's listening. Teachers are a rare breed, good teachers. A good teacher listens as much as he speaks, as well as entertains other people's ideas. We go too deep without knowing the basics, in other words. The basics. We dig way deep into these ideas, but we forget sometimes the simplest ideas, such as to just be or to find balance. We'll dig into an issue not realizing that there are simpler answers to the complex questions sometimes. So we answer the simple questions first, but that means knowing complex ideas, and that's important. In order to solve simple questions, we have to understand complex philosophies. And that takes an education of people, not schooling, but an education, wisdom, gained through life. Another point is when ideas are pushed too strongly, it can be evidence of one being unsure. The way I put it here is obvious truths are seldom argued, as it is a waste of time. Therefore, one defending one's opinions with hostility shows a discomfort and fear. And this is a point that I've tried to, I monitor myself if I respond harshly or critically to a comment or to an idea or to something I read or see. I wonder, what is it inside myself that's making me respond so critically? In other words, if a person's truth is challenged and they get angry about it and start ranting and cussing or however they handle it, or shutting down completely, that to me means that they have no real grasp on what, in other words, maybe their belief is shaky. Because if I were to tell you the sky is blue, you say sure. If I were to tell you, oh, the sky is green, you might say, no, it's blue, and say, no, it's green to me, and the person would just, ignore the conversation because it's irrelevant. 99.9% of the people agree that the sky is blue, so there it is. There are exceptions to the rule and certain ideas that need to be challenged, but generally what I'm saying is that when there's an idea that's argued fervently, it means that it's an idea that's unresolved, an issue that needs to be further studied, because the obvious ones we won't even argue. So when you make a comment like, how do you know this to be true? To like say a person on a video or something, and they say, you're an idiot, you don't know anything, this is true, it's so obvious, you can look blah 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 blah. That's usually on issues that we're not quite sure of. Or maybe the person is just a poor teacher. The last thing I have written down here is some questions cannot be answered. And I know that there are folks out there who will disagree with me, and there are plenty of people who think that everything can be answered. I firmly believe that there are issues about humanity, about existence, that aren't meant to be grasped by the human mind. People have many different ways of seeing this cosmic awareness, or this whatever label you want to put on the cosmic intelligence, the full awareness. Our small little human consciousness can't grasp this bigger picture. We can get bits and pieces of it and tastes. We can see how maybe there's a psychic connection between people, or a collective consciousness at times, or in other words, a connection. But as to how to monitor the entirety of the universe, I see that as an impossible thing, an impossible task to understand everything. So once we accept that, we can humble ourselves to admit that we really don't know shit, and then take the bits and pieces that we do know and work on them. The issues that are most important to me are the ones that some of my heroes in history bring up, the major philosophical debates, because they seem to be the most persistent, ongoing, and the hardest to resolve. I've read people's work of decades to try to figure out and understand exactly what are morals. The simple term of what is justice, that's not an easy question to answer. What is art? It's just an endless array of things that, an artist will tell you this is art, and a politician will tell you this is justice. But all of those things require an understanding of the people as a whole to say exactly, are we even going the right direction, you know? And what is the right direction, and who can say what is the right direction? This is why philosophy is so important to me, and why I'm so interested in these types of subjects, because they're ongoing and they will continue to be parts of our lives, no matter how much we try to ignore them. Having a good round view of the mind of man is shows to me the things that we share, the ideas that throughout history, even centuries ago, 1,000 years ago, the same ideas in completely different societies. Those are the persisting ideas. Not what is marketing doing to our minds, or what are they trying to tell us in movies, or any of this. I mean, these are all interesting things, but they won't endure. They're old stories, and they all go back to metaphors, archetypes, allegories. So, just some thoughts on that, and I guess an idea of why I like philosophy. And as cheesy as the title is, that's why I don't really use it too much. But it's merely love of wisdom. And who could hate that?